Hi, my name's Jekka. I run a herb farm in South Gloucester, which is just north of Bristol. I've been taking cuttings for the past 30 years. It's my absolute heaven. I adore it, being able to create a plant just from a stick or a stem. Any plant that is growing and has lots of new growth, you can take a cutting. Even off annuals, people say you can't. Oh yes, you can. It is one of the most rewarding things to do. But before we start, compost, the engine of where you're growing. It is, I think if anything of all, it is the most important part. I am a great believer in not using too much fertiliser with anything that's young so that the plant gets strong and grows away. So here I've got my potting mix, which is a good potting mix, mixed with 1/3 potting mix, 1/3 propagating bark and 1/3 perlite. I've used perlite this time instead of vermiculite. I don't want to hold water. I want to keep the compost open so the new little baby roots can get through and not get damaged. So I fill my module tray. When I started, of course, we were taking cuttings into pots or into seed trays, and these really have revolutionised taking cuttings. Makes it much easier to get success, a very high success rate. The other top tip when you're filling in is make sure that you smooth off, dib down firmly, because you need to make sure that the root ball is nice and strong. Now I'm going to water that in before I start so that I don't need to water again once it's done. I pass the watering can over it and I always finish away. The reason being that you always get this dribble. I'll then tap that down a couple of times to get it to drop down. Right, my hands are filthy. I don't like dirty hands. So jeans, I get through a lot of jeans. But I can't take cuttings nicely if my hands are wet. This is Oreganum X Majoricum. That X means it's a hybrid. That means you cannot raise it from seed. So you have to take cuttings. It's perfect time of year. They put on lots of nice new growth. I'm looking for something with a nice growing tip and shoots going down 1, 2, 3. So I will take the cutting just below the 3rd one, which is there. I take it carefully, leaving those 2 shoots intact so that it'll actually shoot away and make the plant bushy again. Okay, so holding it carefully, you then, using very sharp snips, I cannot stress enough, keep your tools clean, keep sharpening, and then you just slide it in and take it down like that. It's funny having you lot watching. I'm not used to that. I'm used to having the radio on and just keeping going. It's the most glorious thing. Okay, so I now have landed up with a cutting like that. Very, very important, I don't touch here. I've got dirty hands. So I'm going to take my cutting and I'm going to dip it in. I don't use rooting hormone powder. It is not necessary, I promise you. If you do it right, it's fine. So can you just see, I'm just taking it below the leaf node was, where the leaf was growing. I then make a hole, not right down to the very bottom. I then put my cutting in. I hold it up so it's not touching. And then I firm it in as if I was gardening outside, so it's nice and strong. There you are. And that's a perfect little cutting. Right, I've just done these 2 now. Obviously I'm going to finish the whole tray, but it's really worth labelling in case you get called away, telephone, anything. So I'm going to label it. I always put an O because I know it's an Oreganum and I know it's Majoricum. Again, I put the date because that's important to me, and I'll stick it in. So now if the worst comes to worst, I know what's happening. What you're aiming for though is a tray like this. This was taken in January. You can tell it's beginning to need feed. The change in colour is the sign that it's beginning to get hungry. Perfect for potting up. And all you've got to do is check the root ball. If it's big enough, get potting, enjoy.